So it's a balmy 26 degrees outside. I've got a 99 Ford F-250 7.3 liter Powerstroke Diesel, and I think I need to change a fuel pump. So there's a few things we can check though to make sure it's not the fuel pump, and I'll show you what those are. So the first thing that happened with me yesterday that I noticed was taking off. The truck didn't want to move, like it was really cold. Acted like it was running on 3 or 4 cylinders, and got it on the road. Couldn't get it over 35 miles an hour or so. Eventually it just died. I coasted to a stop and went back in about an hour and was able to limp it home in front of my house here. Can't do this in the garage. Driveway's uphill, kind of a pain in the ass, so put a fuel pump in, won't be too bad out here in the street. On the 99 F-250 Powerstroke, the fuel pump is on the frame rail, pretty much under the driver's seat. So you get a creeper crawl under there, but there's a few things you want to check first. The first thing is the fuses. The first fuse you want to check is under the hood here, close to the firewall in this fuse block. There's a 20 amp fuse right in the back there. I don't know if that cover comes off. It's this one. Let's pull it up. Take a good look at it. See, this one looks good, so it's not that. That's a fuel pump fuse right there. Put that sucker back in. Next one is under this fuse panel here. So I need 2 hands for that. Hold on. So I've taken this knee panel off under the steering wheel, and the other fuse box is right here. That one right there. So we'll take it off. There's the fuel pump under the left frame rail, pretty much under the driver's seat, right there. So I'm going to check that cable. Yeah, sorry, I can't remember my coat. Check that cable, one of those two, see if I have power going to it. And I'll have somebody else in turning on the key so I can check the power. Okay, so this is the positive lead we're going to check right here. We're going to check that with a test light, see if we got power going to the fuel pump. I got somebody in the driver's seat, going to flip the key on. Go ahead and turn the key on. And we have power to the fuel pump with no fuel moving. So we need to replace fuel pump. Let's do it. So the first thing I'm going to do is loosen this band clamp up here. It's a 7mm. I just got the box end over the top of the bolt. I'll loosen it up. So I've taken the bolt out here. Holds the band clamp together. It's a 7mm. I'm going to take a 9mm and loosen both leads, the positive and the negative, on the front end of the fuel pump. Again, I'm not a mechanic. I just own a truck and do shit like this sometimes. It's almost impossible to hold the camera and film it at the same time, but I think you'll get the idea pretty well. I've disconnected the battery also, negative terminals on both batteries. So I've taken the positive lead off. I'm going to wait and take the negative lead off. It's not impossible, but for a dummy like me, I'm just going to wait till I get drop the whole thing out of there, and then I'll take that negative lead off and just screw it on, bolt it onto the new one. But yeah, next. So now we're working on the inside of the frame rail. Just disconnected the positive terminal. Now, or the positive lead, sorry. Move to the outside of the frame. See the 3 bolts there that will hold the whole assembly on. I'm going to take those off now. 3 13mm bolts on the outside of the frame rail. Take the assembly out. Well, like I said, I'm sure a diesel mechanic has a much better way of doing this, but if you're just a backyard Joe like me working on your truck, needs to get shit done, ain't too bad. Next, I've got to separate these brake lines from the fuel pump housing. Kind of a pain in the ass, but I'm sure there's an easier way to do it. But I don't know. I'm just going to try and unsnap them and lay them to the side. See how that goes. I popped this brake line out, but it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of difference. So I think what I'll do now is take off this locking mechanism around the fuel line. And I'll probably end up, once I get the fuel line loose, just pulling the whole pump assembly out the back of this housing here. Looks like the easiest way, but I don't know. We'll see. So I found it a little bit easier just to pry the bolts out of the hose on the frame. You have a little bit more working room and stuff. I've popped the locking mechanism to the fuel line on the front one. The back one, I'm not quite sure how that one's going to work yet. Not quite sure how that's going to work yet, but hopefully it's not too bad. So I loosened the brake lines from the fuel pump housing. It's a whole lot easier to work with. So the positive terminal seems to be a 9mm and the negative's an 8mm. I don't know why they're different. Again, I'm not a mechanic, but just a little footnote there. Alright, so I've got this nice cheap little fuel line disconnect I bought from O'Reilly. The theory is you push it in hard enough and it lets the spring loose and disconnects the fuel line. So this is at the top end of the pump. It's right there. So now I'm going to press that in and I'll get a little bit of fuel out here, so I got a catch pan to catch that, and hopefully everything goes well. So it's not too bad. I released it and let it go, and it's coming down into my catch pan here. A little bit on the leaf spring, but all in all, not too bad. Kind of hard to get your arms up in there. That is disconnected on the front. So I've got the back line still connected and the front one is disconnected. I'm not sure if I should try and undo the back, pull the whole thing out. Let me just try and pull the whole thing out. It'd be a lot easier to get to the back one in. If I pull it out and just kind of point it down. There we go. Just drain that into the tank there. So now I should be able to disconnect this back line pretty easy and take the whole thing out. So there's what the frame looks like without a fuel pump. There's a fuel pump hanging down from the frame. Dripping a little bit of diesel, but the fuel tank drains from the top, so not from the bottom, so it's not like it's going to siphon anything out. Just so happens I filled up my tank Thursday, truck died Saturday, so got a full tank. No need to drain anything. See you in a bit. So the back hose is pretty easy. That plastic clevis looking thing just lifted straight up with a screwdriver, and then I pulled it out. Once it was out, I just pulled the back hose off the back of the fuel pump. So pretty easy. Got the fuel pump hanging over there still. Just need to disconnect the wiring harness clamp that holds it to the frame of that unit, and then I'll slip the new one in. I don't know how much diesel is going to come out of here. I hope not a whole lot. I should probably get a plug. I don't know. I'll let you know. Yeah, looks like it's starting to drip a little bit. Alright, so that wasn't horrible, but once I took off that fitting for the back hose on the old one, of course the fuel came out, which is fine. I mean, it didn't spray, but it was ready to come out, so it just kind of dripped out. And I thought it would stop, but it didn't. So I hustled and threw the new fuel pump in the housing and insulation and plugged it back in and reattached it. Put that plastic clip back in there. It doesn't butt up the same that the other one did, but the stem's longer before the ring on the tube there. So I think that'll work. I'm not sure. We'll get it bolted back up there and see what happens. Alright, so we got the new fuel pump in. Everything's wired up, bolted back to the frame. Fuel lines are connected. And that's all there is to it. Well, I've got fuel pump installed now and got it plugged in and let the glow plugs warm up a bit. It's only been about a half hour or so. I think it's gonna spitter and sputter a little bit while the fuel gets in there, but we'll crank it over a few times and let it cycle through and see what happens here. I can definitely hear the fuel pump working now, which is good. Still got my wait to start light on. Can hear the fuel pump shoving fuel into the empty fuel tank up front of the engine bay. I put a new fuel filter in it too while it was empty, air filter. Let's crank it up, see what happens. Wait for that light to go out. Running a little rough. This might start pretty quick here. Give it a little gas. It's going to be rough for a while, get that air out of the system. Shaking a bit. Starting to smooth out a little bit. Not a whole lot of white smoke blowing out like there was before. Was just filling the block with white smoke, but still running a little bit rough. We'll let it idle for a bit here. That's looking a lot better. Last night when I was trying to idle it, it was about 500. You gotta give it gas, it would just die. But I think the fuel pump did it. We just gotta purge the air out of the system and all is well. Thanks for watching.